Howdy. I'm not so happy. Well, that might not be entirely true. I'm generally a happy guy, and I believe in the law of averages, and so on the whole, they're going to be okay. But my Vespa is dead. I mean, it's dead. It's not dead. I mean, you can turn it on, hit the starter, it starts up, it sounds normal and everything, except that it's got a coolant leak from a head gasket. And so there's a couple of gaskets in the way that liter engine is devised, and it was explained to me in some detail by Lou DiBiase at Vespa Toronto West. Lou's got to be one of the most knowledgeable Vespa mechanics around, and when you add up the cost of getting in there, replacing the gasket, probably finding some other stuff that's not quite right with the engine, milling a head, sending it out to maybe get milled, it starts to look like an expensive proposition. Plus, there's some things that I knew were not 100%. It had a terrible wobble, or it has a terrible wobble, and so Lou said candidly it kind of freaked him out. He felt unsafe on the bike. I mean, I guess I'm just used to the wobble, but that means dropping the steering column at a minimum, re-greasing, tightening it up. He'd also like to change the bearings in the front wheel. And finally, there was a little bit of a rattle from the transmission. I've had that for a long time. My dealer in Montreal basically said, not a cause for concern, but Lou's attitude is, well, it could cause a catastrophic failure of the transmission, depending on what the cause is. And so, in for a penny, in for a pound, Lou would tear into the transmission and solve that issue as well. Then he says, well, after you've spent like a large amount of money fixing these issues, it's still 7-year going on 8-year-old Vespa GTS. It's got 50,000 kilometers on it right now. It could go to 150, but at what expense? And then Lou says, if it were him, he'd buy a new GTS 2018, ABS, traction control, yada yada yada. And I must say that that's an appealing proposition. But right now, I kind of wish I had a Vespa to tool around on. So it's sitting in the garage. It's kind of not doing anything and slowly leaking whatever was left of its coolant onto the floor in my parking spot, which is not a big deal. It was basically empty anyway after it had spent a few days in Lou's shop. So, leaking on his floor. How did this happen? I was coming back from an excellent adventure down south, 1,000 kilometers in 3 days, and I have to say the Vespa was performing very well, aside from the wobble and maybe that slight rattle from time to time from the transmission, but basically stellar performer. The temperature gauge was just stuck right on the middle position where it ought to be. Everything was good. I got stuck in rush hour traffic in Buffalo, New York, and once I crossed the border, that was another lineup. It was a very hot day. This was last Wednesday. And so I was kind of anxious to get home. And to be honest, I may have been pushing it a little bit harder than I should have. Wide open throttle, maybe. Anyway, I had to stop for gas in Niagara, fortunately. And when I pulled over and popped the seat, there was steam coming out of the engine compartment. And I knew right away that was not a good sign. And so the bike is economically dead. That's the bad news. The good news is I've got options to explore, and one of those options might be a brand new Vespa in 2018. Fortunately I don't develop much of an emotional attachment to machines. I don't name them. I don't really decide whether they're his or hers or whatever. And they're just really machines. Although I have to say my Vespa, there's a lot of fond memories associated with that bike. I bought it in order to take off on an ambitious touring adventure with Bob Leong. I bought it at Bob's suggestion. He said a 300 GTS would be just fine, and it was. It's a great machine. It's a great touring bike. I've thought, should I maybe once I'm getting rid of the Vespa, I think the Honda Shadow is going to go too. Should I get a BMW GS? I know there are people who love that bike. But the people I know who love BMWs also happen to love their Vespas and maybe ride them more. And I was exchanging some email with Sonia, and she was mentioning to me how she's going to get rid of her Sportster and just focus on the Vespa because she loves riding it just so much. So, you know, I think there's probably a Vespa in the cards. Time will tell. That's it for this little, somber edition of Life on Two Wheels. Come back to me, in a week or so. I think I'll have that Pennsylvania road trip up. And there's some other stuff that I'm working on too. There's always 5.0 and the 6, my little expose on the Toronto Police Department. And, brand new Ray-Bans. Brand new, well, the frame is brand new, the lenses are old. And there's a story about that too that I'm going to be posting shortly. So, come on back to Life on Two Wheels. There's more to enjoy. See you next time. Don't forget to click to subscribe, like this video, and visit the blog where you'll find the touring guide, the gear guide, and so much more. Bye now.